I don't think we thought it would be like Bitcoin, but like here we are. You have to sort of zoom out and look at all these things and look at this this whole group. That's why we did this investigation. I pretty much researched myself out of a job. What was supposed to start as just a simple Tether, let's look into Tether, turned into an 80,000 word investigation of like the early Bitcoin space and now the stablecoin issuers and the regulators and where we're going. And there's so much disgusting stuff all over this. I mean, the Gillibrand connections with Nexium, both of her parents being involved in a Bronfman-led sex cult, extremely disturbing. And now she's writing the legislation, that regulates stablecoins. It heavily uses the Terra Luna FTX implosion, which you could argue, and I do, that these were controlled demolitions done to simulate a dialectic, basically. If we need to ban algorithmic stablecoins, they all say that everywhere. David Marcus, Thiel, the reserve guys, the legislators, like Gillibrand and Lummis, they specifically say we need to preserve the dual banking system. We can't have Bitcoin backed money. We need to do treasuries. They're really building this, you look at this whole machine and they're building this, consent towards us all being super stoked about, this private stable coins and Bitcoin being held by the U.S. government. This is sort of where we are. And so if you look at it as sort of an intelligence play, these are currency speculators. That's what Epstein was. That's what Thiel was. What would they do? How would they fix our debt and move into this new system? They would probably do exactly what they did.
Well, one thing I want to bring up about, people like Gillibrand and Lummis is that they frame a lot, and especially Lummis, frames a lot of her crypto advocacy as necessary to ensure dollar hegemony, right? And so as I understand it, and a lot of, rhetoric I've heard in the Bitcoin space for years is that fiat is terrible. It's broken money. We need to move on from fiat. And so hearing things like that from Lummis, hearing Trump at the Bitcoin conference say, actually, the Bitcoin and the dollar are not competing. Bitcoin is going to strengthen the dollar and all of this stuff. I think it should be a harbinger for concern for people that don't want a debt-based monetary future. And unfortunately, it's essentially been admitted that, the next president, who we know now will be Trump, is going to face some sort of U.S. government debt crisis. And of course, that debt crisis is the consequence of wildly irresponsible fiscal policy, right? And so what I am concerned about is that there will be no accountability for that. There is a plan to use things that were meant, or at least pitched, as destroying fiat and the debt-based monetary system, will be used instead to usher in a newer version of it that, as Mark pointed out earlier, it will likely be deflationary, but only because they've stolen all of the assets and really most things of value. So at that point, they do want a deflationary system because they have hoarded all of the wealth, and they don't want their wealth to inflate away now that they hold almost all of the cards. Right. And so, what concerns me there then is the stable coin play, as we set up for, a long time. Stable coins have the potential to be just as programmable and surveillable as a CBDC could be. And the Fed and the national security community, meaning, the CIA, among other agencies, have been very open that stable coins will ensure dollar hegemony. And you have, stable coins like Tether, for example, saying that we're a partner of U.S. dollar hegemony. And, Trump with the, his family's, stable coin project having recently come out. It's about globalizing the dollar.
I don't think that's going to get much adoption.
Well, no, maybe not that necessarily, but it shows that the intent is to globalize the dollar and essentially use dollar stable coins, not that aren't necessarily directly issued by the U.S. government, but will be regulated by it, to become, essentially a de facto world currency. That's essentially the push. And, it's essentially been happening relatively quietly for some time in economies that are dramatically unstable and have been made unstable by entities like the IMF, for example, which, the U.S. military refers to the IMF as a financial weapon of military power of the United States government. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
In a whirlwind of speculative activity that has engulfed the financial markets, one of the most buzzworthy headlines has emerged from Elliott Management, a hedge fund giant with $70 billion in assets. This veteran firm has cast a critical eye on the Trump administration's embrace of cryptocurrencies, pointing a finger at what it perceives as a speculative mania that could lead to unprecedented chaos. But what is truly at stake here, and why should investors pay heed to these developments now? Let's delve deeper and truly understand this perspective. Welcome back, everyone, to Investocracy Crypto.
And then Argentina, of course, a lot of people are using Tether because their local currency is no good. And that's happening in other places around the world that have also been subjected, to essentially financial warfare by these same predatory, again, debt slavery model based institutions. And so will this actually improve the situation? Will it prevent future irresponsible fiscal policy if this is what ultimately ends up happening? It will come down to people resisting that and saying, no, that's not okay. If really it is true that people in the Bitcoin space are opposed to debt slavery and debt-based monetary a debt-based monetary paradigm, which is what I have heard for a long time, and I absolutely agree with that. And I am also concerned about the introduction now of climate finance as a way to use carbon market schemes or other forms of carbon pricing, or some of these efforts to securitize the natural world, like one that was we recently wrote about the Amazon rainforest, for example, being securitized by the guy that invented ETFs. And used to be, head of BlackRock's global investments or something like that. That these are going to be used as different places to shovel debt, because if you have a huge debt crisis, you're looking for things to, shovel the debt into to make your debt problem go away. And so, as we've talked about, I think starting, maybe 3 years ago, Marty, on your show, I've been on talking about this effort a while, right?
At least 5.
Yeah, an effort to securitize, the natural world and create this new asset class, that these groups that back this call nature's economy, because they can, essentially quadruple or quintuple the amount of assets in the current economy and basically keep the existing casino model that Wall Street and these criminal banks have, go on forever. They need that new asset class to keep their models going.
Elliott's criticism doesn't come without weighty consideration. This hedge fund, known for its aggressive investment strategies, perceives the Trump administration's crypto enthusiasm as a risk akin to inviting raccoons to guard the henhouse. Diving into the labyrinth of numbers and political motives, Bitcoin's ascent from approximately $70,000 to a staggering $100,000 following Trump's electoral victory is a testament to this volatile environment. Trump's executive order advocating for U.S. leadership in digital assets has set the stage, positioning the nation on a precarious ledge between financial innovation and instability.
In particular, you have someone like Howard Lutnick closely tied to Tether, but also very connected to ESG, the Sustainable Development Goals. Cantor Fitzgerald has an entire fund dedicated to implementing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Right, which includes, by the way, digital ID is part of that, and programmable surveillable money, linking a digital ID to some sort of CBDC or UBI biometric wallet and all of this stuff. This is in the SDGs, and he's, on the board of this company that we've talked about most of this year, actually called Satellogic, that is involved in several efforts to securitize nature, and turn basically things like the Amazon rainforest into, tradable financial products that don't actually conserve anything but are framed as that. And then, this effort to basically install a predatory global carbon market over Latin America that at the same time it ends local and national sovereignty, or would de facto end it and lead toward a more regional government and regional government block, and try and build out like a smart power grid and 5G stuff throughout the continent under the guise of conserving it and ending climate change. Ultimately, as I've argued in that, and Mark and I have argued in some of our other pieces, the goal is really just to use that stuff to shovel debt someplace. And even, RFK Jr.'s former VP pick, Nicole Shanahan, She's led projects, research projects about how to facilitate quantitative easing by quantitatively easing into, carbon sequestration projects and tokenized carbon credits and carbon coins.
A supporting chorus from pro-crypto political action committees, such as Fairshake, has added a significant financial undertone, reportedly spending $173 million in the recent election cycle. These developments coincide with Trump's own ventures into cryptocurrency, most notably the recent launch of crypto platform World Liberty Financial and even meme coins, signifying an intention to capitalize on the trend. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
I mean, a couple of things. I mean, going back to like Cynthia Lummis and Gildebrand. I don't know Gildebrand well. I do know Cynthia and her team very well. And even though she may publicly posture like Bitcoin's strengthening the dollar and all that, I think it is important to take into consideration just like the rhetoric around Bitcoin being adopted as a reserve asset and thinking of like the debt situation. The government does have a needle to thread if they are going to allow Bitcoin to proliferate, facilitate growth within the United States of individual Bitcoiners, Bitcoin businesses, because if they send the signal to the market like, oh, we're dumping the dollar, we're going all in on Bitcoin, like they have this massive $36 trillion debt problem that is systemically important to somewhat stable financial system globally. And so I think they have to be very strategic about how they position. So I wouldn't be surprised if the head nod to the dollar is going to be around for a while is simply just a late hedge against potentially rugging the treasury markets, like in a moment's notice. And then going back
Drunken Miller's shorting the bond market. There's I think I saw you talking about that.
Yeah, Drunken Miller's short. Paul Tudor Jones is recommending that people don't own bonds, and so the government is in this. Federal government's in this position where it's like we have this $36 trillion gorilla in the room, and we need to figure out how to safely walk it into its cage. And
well, I'm sure Howard Lutnick is trying to figure out how to do that since he's one of the biggest traders of U.S. government debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
At one point, like 70% of all U.S. treasuries were like settled through Cantor and Cantor subsidiaries, which is totally insane.
Yeah. And like going back to like the co-option of Bitcoin, that's another part of the game theory that's been talked about for a while. It's and something I've been saying, written about, it's that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And that's the optimist, the eternal optimist. Maybe some will say it is naivety or gullibleness, but I would not be surprised if people within the government have seen Bitcoin for what it is and are like, oh shit, this is the thing. We need to basically act to make sure that we are well positioned to not get left behind, and are trying to figure out a way to basically, using Jerome Powell's words, Janet Yellen's words, create a soft landing transition in which Bitcoin is allowed to flourish. With that being said, Gildebrand, particularly, I don't like her position on privacy, KYC, AML.
Well, she's Hillary Clinton's successor in New York. She was picked by Clinton, and she considers Hillary her mentor.
Yeah.
All you really need to know.
And so that's I think, again, going back to anchoring to accountability and vigilance, I'm cautiously optimistic. That's the other thing, going back to Trump's first term in 2016, I'm sure you guys have heard, the narrative that he was completely handcuffed, he got into office and didn't know how to operate within the bureaucracy of the federal government and sort of had the uniparty blob forced on him. And I will say this time around does seem like he's learning the lesson.
While caution is inherently advisable, especially given the ominous collapse warnings, a strategic, informed approach could unlock significant potential. Current forecasts continue to project robust growth in the value of digital assets, as long as geopolitical factors remain supportive and adoption rates continue to climb. But what about you, the viewer? What do you think? Share your thoughts. And finally, if you would like to know more about cryptocurrencies or specifically Bitcoin, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.